the screen. Absolutely. Usually it yells at me that we're recording. So. Yeah, recording in process. All right. Okay, since we have quorum of 6 people, I'm going to go ahead and call us to order. Nina, do you want to start with the announcements?
Sure. Just to be sure, can you guys online hear us? Okay.
I can hear
I
you
can
just
hear you.
fine.
Yep.
We cannot hear you,
We
Kent.
can't hear you, Kent.
How about now?
We always have tech
We
issues.
can hear you.
Sure.
We still can't hear you, but we know you can hear us. Is it
This is Tammy. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
is it actually the are we where are we with that?
That's
That
on.
should be it. Okay.
Mm.
So
And the
it should be-
microphones.
Maybe someone else can someone else try, see if Jack or Philip could say something?
Yeah,
See if it's us
this-
or if it was Kent's side.
This is Tammy.
Can you hear me? It's Philip.
Hello.
Yeah, I'm not hearing anybody.
This is Philip. Can you hear me?
Hear us, I just don't think
I
they-
think
they
we
can hear
can.
them.
Hello.
There's something on our side with the sound being off.
Yeah, let's see.
Yeah, what about our speakers?
Give us 1 second, we'll figure it out, or we'll try to figure it out for a second before we continue, just so you can participate as well.
Yeah, sorry guys, always
At least you guys can hear us, that's good.
Yeah.
it's always something.
Always something.
I don't know what this thing's doing now.
Well, try just clicking on the little speaker icon in the bottom right and see if
Yeah.
some menu or other pops up to.
Oh, it's all the way up.
That's on, the TV volume's up. So that's interesting.
Is there a click to turn the speakers on?
That's what I'm checking on the control. It should be automatic.
Should be.
Should and
Right.
are 2 separate things.
Yeah.
Frequently.
Okay, let's see. They don't make this easy. This is on camera.
While Nina's working on that, why don't I skip ahead to the voting on the notes from last week or last month? Did everyone have a chance to review the minutes? Okay.
Yep.
Can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move.
Second? Good, so moved. All in favor, and those of you who are online can't hear, if you could put your hand up to approve the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Sounds good, minutes pass.
Is iPhone Tammy again?
Yeah, yes, you
Can't
can.
hear you.
That's
Still
okay.
can't.
Right in the chat box with you, Tammy. At
Oh, sorry, guys.
least there'll be a written record of everything they say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I might go ahead to give her a few minutes to allow for public comment. I have one that I'm going to read from someone who couldn't be here today. But is there anyone, I guess we'll start. Jane, did you have anything you wanted to say today?
I actually had a few things, but I'm sort of not organized right this very minute. I do want to point out that the state of California, the legislature and the governor signed a resolution that there is a climate crisis, an urgency and emergency. I hope that the Sustainability Board can work quick in all the areas that are scary and urgent. So I'm sure there was something else important, but
If you want to
maybe
think
the
about it
most
for a second.
important-
Oh, go ahead.
No, that I do have extra copies, color copies of that whole report that the city waited for a year for. And if anybody needs them, I've got them.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
And if you think of something else, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and read Paul's letter. And then if you have something that you think of or would like to say after.
Okay, we're talking about trees today in the NASA heat study. Is that right? Because I know that a
Yes,
lot of
actually.
people.
We're getting an
talking about
update.
that.
So good, thank you.
Yeah.
We don't have,
Urgency.
like, I won't have anything to distribute out today because we're waiting for that to,
Oh, still waiting. You know, it's been, I heard about it in the bike ped advisory board last spring, early spring.
4 months?
So it's been taking a long time.
Not really.
well, it's
This has happened very quickly.
10-week project.
That's
But I can get into that more and the timeline. But we set it up a while before the project actually started, because it was
NASA.
based on a project term of the interns and their cohort.
It's like a summer internship kind of deal.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. Hello.
In the right place?
Yes.
Yeah, Sustainability Board.
Pardon?
Are you here for the Sustainability Board?
Yes, ma'am.
Sounds good. We're actually doing public comment if you were here to comment publicly.
Yeah.
I'm mainly here, I've got a copy of the agenda to find out about the urban heat study and
Great.
what kind of progress has been made on that. And my name is Elizabeth Bishop, and I am a master gardener, and I've taken additional training to be a tree master gardener, so I'm very interested in the tree canopy.
Okay, I'm making notes, Elizabeth.
I think you're gonna be recruited. Good to see you.
That's kind of why I'm showing up.
Good, good. We need more of that. All right, I'm gonna read a letter that Paul, and I may butcher his last name, Obermite.
Obermite? Ober?
Abermite? Okay, Abermite. Paul says, hello and thank you for the opportunity to share with you today. My name is Paul. I serve on the Green Spaces Committee and am involved in numerous revitalization efforts in Wichita through my LLC ICT transformations. Wichita has taken great strides in recent years to organize sustainability efforts to the critical mass we are beginning to see today. However, actual implementation of climate action and specifically emission reductions has yet to materialize. We know that buildings and the building environment at large are responsible for nearly 40% of the CHG emissions in the United States when taking into account construction and operations, including electricity derived from fossil fuels. We also know that energy efficiency and other environmentally sounding retrofits in buildings can have massive financial benefits for property owners through cost reductions as well as health benefits for tenants and neighbors through cleaner indoor and outdoor air quality. From both an economic competitiveness and climate security standpoint, Wichita must begin to adopt and implement sustainable building standards if we are to position ourselves as a city capable of attracting talent and future industry, including healthcare, advanced manufacturing, and green economy companies. However, we cannot change what we cannot measure. I propose a benchmarking initiative to demonstrate and measure the energy and environmental performance of one or more medium-sized, and he's considering that 50,000 plus square feet buildings in Wichita's central business district. Ideally, targets would include a private-owned commercial building, a city-owned building, and a private public development to demonstrate building performance measures across different sectors. In Kansas City, Missouri, this kind of initiative is already underway via city ordinance to submit and collect annual building data from property owners and operators. All buildings of 50,000 plus square foot are required to report building performance data related to energy, water, trash, and other outputs. Subject matter experts and organizations that helped pave the way for this ordinance, like Metropolitan Energy Center, US Green Building Council, Central Plains, and numerous LEED certified architects and engineers are willing to help provide technical assistance in such a pilot initiative for Wichita. Let's take this opportunity to learn from one another and fast track our progress toward a cleaner, healthier, and more equitable built environment. If anyone is interested in discussing this with me further, they can reach me at, and I can send the email around, or to Laura Lombard on the Economic Development Committee. Thanks, Paul.
What was his last name?
Abermite?
Thank you. Abermite. I need to ask him next time I see him. How do you say your last name?
Multi-syllable.
Yeah, it's ABROMEIT.
Okay, I'll get that.
And he
later.
should be on that full committee list since he is on
Okay.
Green Space.
And I may or may not have just recruited him for economic development. Cool.
Okay.
Mhm. Thanks, Paul.
Great. Yep. So yeah, I think that it is something that so for those who are working on those areas, let's maybe keep that in mind. All right, Nina, back to you. Back to announcements.
Okay, yeah, sorry all, I have not been able to figure out what's going on with the audio here, but we can't hear anybody online, but please feel free to chime in at any point through the chat, and we'll keep an eye on that throughout the meeting. So announcements, I did inform the board, but wanted to make sure that everyone knew that our Stormwater Advisory Board position, Greg Allison did resign from this board. So that does bring our quorum down to 6. We are talking with Stormwater Advisory Board to try and get a new appointee. And with that said, we will try and standardize meeting times at this point forward, because Greg, I know, had a schedule conflict in the evenings, so we'll try and keep it to the 6:15 timeframe going forward. And so I'll make sure to schedule that for this room. And I think that only changes one other meeting this year, our October meeting. So I'll make sure to send you guys a reminder about that. The other announcement I had was about the bike ped count. WAMPO does an annual count of bicycles and pedestrians to get a sense of people who are using the roads for alternative transportation. And they are looking for volunteers right now. And these are at different stations across the Wichita region. And there are 3 dates that they're looking for volunteers for, and I believe it's September 21st, 22nd, and 24th. And you can reach out to me if you're interested, and I can pass your information along, or WAMPO staff. Dora Gallo is the main person coordinating that. And I can send you her information if anyone is interested in signing up for that.
And they're only 2-hour shifts. In other words, it's not all day. There are locations all over actually the area, and it's not forever. I mean, hopefully it'll be good weather, but it's been sort of fun. So it is, they have even added sites and another day of counting just because they really want that data.
As a response to all the people who I'm sure are still saying, nobody ever uses those trails.
Trails, these are intersections. So that's people walking and biking to work and the grocery store and church and parks with strollers and groceries. There is a huge amount of active transportation, not just sort of recreational or transportation. Those bike trails are fun, but there are people on the street that need that safety.
No argument for me. I've just spent 20 years butting heads with people who apparently live out in the suburbs and never get out of their cars. And can't believe that somebody would actually walk or use a bike. Anyway, good. I'm glad.
Alrighty, and then the last announcement I had is a little last minute add-on, but I wanted to make note of the conference that I attended since you all pitched in.
Yes.
That was very well received. So the panel that I sat on was about community resiliency and what different cities are doing. We had some of the highest attendance during the 2-day conference for that. I think we almost filled every seat. So people are very, very interested in this kind of work. And so a lot of people had questions afterwards, and a lot of people wanted to share their own success stories or, challenges. So I just wanted to relay that.
What were some of the key what were some of the key challenges or interest areas that when people are asking questions and whatnot, they brought up?
I would say something that seemed to come up a lot was having a lot to do and not knowing how to start or where to start, which is something I think we face.
Yeah.
So that's, funding, obviously. And so, The only problem was that it was so short that we didn't get a lot of time to ask questions, especially to the other panelists. So there wasn't as much discussion as I would have liked to learn from them. But a lot of people learned from us. And so I think that in itself was valuable.
You said that there was quite a bit of interest in what Wichita's doing.
Yeah, and I think, you know, just what different cities are doing in general. People wanted to know what initiatives other cities are taking to sort of step into this realm of sustainability. A lot of places that I talked to had differing problems, but it all sort of relates back to lack of resources or prioritization in other areas. And so I think we're seeing that a lot in other communities, as well as there's not necessarily the support that they're wanting to see. And so that's causing you know, issues with this long-term planning.
So the people that you got were all from Kansas. Were they mostly urban?
The two speakers were from Lawrence and from Greensburg. So we
Okay.
heard about, you know, their building
yeah.
up of everything after
yeah.
the tornado.
If y'all haven't been to Greensburg, you need to go.
Yeah, it's really cool.
It is.
So that was really interesting to hear about, and
One of
yeah,
my
basically
favorite
starting from
towns
scratch. Yeah,
because of how they've rebuilt it.
yeah,
There's a lot that can be taken away, and both a lot what they did well, and then admittedly what they didn't do well. And they'll talk about that, right? I mean, there were things that overall it was a really interesting way of rebuilding a city in terms of how they've used green technologies and architecture. There were a few things they would have done differently had they known, right? So but
Yeah.
that's always going to be true. So
Exactly.
again, it's just something that should we want to take some of those lessons learned as well.
right. And I think, you know, one of the things that came up was this idea of gathering all the data and knowing everything ahead of time before you jump into the work, or jumping into the work because you need to do it now, and then having to backtrack if necessary. So it's kind of, that was something that came up a lot too, was having to balance those because of the urgency, but also because you want to make sure you're doing it well and doing it equitably, and not, you know, wasting money by having to go back and do rework.
What was the consensus on that? What were some of the takeaways from that discussion for people?
We didn't get a lot of commentary from that. Our facilitator took a lot of time in the beginning to introduce everything.
Right.
So yeah, we were able to just, you know, mention that, but there wasn't a lot of opportunity to further delve into it.
But I do think that's something that, I mean, we're already kind of struggling with that, right? Like how, you know, we have a lot of pressure to just jump right in and get things done. But on the other hand, what we want to make sure we do it right.
Right. So it's finding
where is
that
finding that balance?
right.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I don't think there was a clear-cut answer for that.
it's probably not.
Yeah.
Greensburg is actually a very good analogy for that, just because under the circumstances, everything was urgent, and whoever was bringing funding and enthusiasm tended to get their project done. And,
Right.
and they discovered over the long haul that some of those projects were not really what they should have done. But like you said, they've also since then tried to fix a lot of that. And
Yes.
so they're where they are now is pretty good.
And they did some really good, I mean, the school, I mean, it's one of the most impressive schools I've seen in terms of how they've used their architecture and whatnot to create a really energy efficient and water efficient facility. So, I mean, taking lessons from that. So yeah, some of it was really good that they did up front, and some of it, and the things that didn't go as well didn't necessarily go badly. It's just that there were things that they would improve upon the next
But
time.
that was a long time ago too.
It was.
It was not like
No.
it just happened a couple of years ago.
No.
So things have changed a lot
Right,
since then too.
right.
So that's a part of it. I know.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's part of it too. We want to build something that presumably will last a long time. But yeah, anyway.
And the feds paid for most of that, right?
The what?
Oh, it was,
Yeah,
they
it was a lot
had
of
funding
FEMA.
from a
From
bunch of
the
different, lots of volunteer funding and,
Yeah, a lot of government funding going.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sorry.
There's an enormous amount of
Yeah.
volunteer work. I know the local AIA chapter, architects chapter was very heavily involved doing a lot of pro bono work.
They still struggle, Greensburg, because they just don't have all their people back.
Yep.
And they really don't have a lot of industry
Right.
there.
And affordable housing. That's one of the key areas that when I was out there and we were talking with key officials, that was the big piece that what they really should have built early on, right after the tornado, were probably duplexes that were more affordable rather than single family homes, as an example. So again, that's not necessarily, you know, it is a sustainability problem because it's an economic problem, all of it. But that kind of planning and understanding what the demographics are going to be of your city. And they just lost a lot of people to Pratt in particular that just never came back, and they couldn't afford to because there was more affordable housing in Pratt than there was in Greensburg.
Because it was older,
It was older, exactly. Yeah, all the new build was
all brand new.
all brand new and therefore
Yeah.
expensive.
And but a lot more efficient.
Yeah.
Than what they had in Pratt. I'm wondering too, did you have people from some of the rural cities? Was there somebody from Hayes? I mean,
No, I mean,
did
it was
they,
a
do they even
small-
care?
It was a small panel, so it was only the three.
Well, but I mean, the
but-
people that were there, that
in
came
the
to
room.
participate.
Not any that spoke up, or at least they didn't say that they were from those areas.
So it was Wichita, Lawrence,
Mhm.
and Kansas City.
Greensburg. Greensburg.
No, it was Greensburg.
Yeah.
Sorry, Greensburg was one of the panels.
Yeah,
That's good. So at least you did have a rural town
yeah, a little
represented.
bit smaller.
Yeah.
But obviously extenuating circumstances.
Right.
So a little,
Yeah.
not every
Yeah,
town
well,
is
they
gonna
had-
face the same.
I don't want to use the word opportunity. They had the circumstance of having to start literally from, yeah.
Yeah. But I know that conference was more than just this,
Right.
because I know that as Sierra Club, we got invited to participate in their CAFO sessions that they were doing, confined animal feeding operations,
Yeah.
livestock,
Mhm.
and trying to deal with the pollution that they cause. And the water pollution is the worst part. So I know that there was a lot of stuff in there, but I'm glad that
Right.
you got to go participate. in
Right,
this.
yeah, it spanned quite a lot of topics, and so this was just the one
Mhm.
sort of area. I mean, there were other sessions on environmental justice, and other contaminants and, you know, things like that, relevant things, but this one session was sort of what pertains directly to
Right,
what we're
right,
doing.
yeah. I'm so glad you were there.
Yeah. Thank you for representing Wichita.
No problem.
Paid vacation, right?
Well, it was still work. I did want to mention that there's Kent had a public comment, so I just wanted to note that there's a webinar on Thursday, August 25th at 7 p.m. for Community Solar and the Microgrid Act, and that is at kansasgreenparty.org Facebook page.
I actually have the link to that I can forward y'all if you would like it.
Good.
I can send that to you and she
Thanks,
can
Kat.
send it out.
Okay, I think that's it for announcements.
What's next on our, I kind of skipped around a little bit
Yeah,
while.
a little bit.
Okay, were there any additional public comments before we move on to discussion items? And if there are any on Zoom, please write them. I don't think there probably is. Okay. All right, so moving on to the heat map.
Yeah, so just to give you guys a brief update, the heat map portion of the project is finished. Right now, we are waiting on NASA export control. So basically it goes through like quality assurance check before they can distribute materials to us. And so we will be having a story map, a GIS story map online. So that'll have the interactive maps, which will be really nice. That will also be paired with the narrative they've written out that talks about the heat, how that interplays with socioeconomic factors, how that interplays with canopy. And then I think there's a couple more maps, but we don't have that in hand yet, and we probably won't until mid-September when that gets approved, and then that needs to be transferred to us to be hosted by the city. So we have to figure out what that looks like. But we will definitely share that with you guys as soon as we're able, and we'll give you the link. We've had some press interest in that as well. So we're not there just yet, but I know everyone's really excited about this. I will also say that they were able to do an update on our canopy. by using satellite data. They used something called Planet Scope that gets really high resolution data, so we can look and see what our canopy looks like on a little bit more of a granular scale. So that will be really cool to see.
Comment, Nina?
Yes, are we gonna direct tree planting towards these areas of highest heat? Yes, that is the intention, is that this project will help inform tree planting, because we can see where the highest vulnerability is. And this will probably work in tandem with the tree policy that's being worked on right now.
That's what is that? How many, it was 1,000 or 10,000 trees that we're gonna plant with the new budget?
I think it was 1,000.
Okay.
I can't recall.
Yeah, I don't remember. It's either 1,000 or 10,000.
I think it's 1,000.
Okay.
1,000,
1,000.
Philip says 1,000,
Okay.
That's what I remember
Okay.
hearing during.
but we
the
need
budget.
10,000.
We need, at least, and we're
Yeah.
going to need more next spring. I don't know how it is in your neighborhoods. I lived in Delano, and a lot of the neighborhoods with the older, like 100-year-old trees, they've already lost their leaves
Uh-huh.
entirely.
Yeah.
And they don't have the reserves to go to next spring, so I don't think they're gonna survive, and that's
of all the heat
all
this
over the central suburbs.
Yeah.
We're losing big old trees by buckets this fall. It's gonna be bad next spring.
Yeah. I will mention that one of the projects that was identified to pursue funding for through BIL is like the Healthy Streets grant. And so there's interest in Public Works and Parks and Rec working together on that grant proposal to fund additional tree funding or tree planting. So it's, a lot of that is still up in the air because we don't know when a lot of these grants are coming out or what the details are. But when that does come out, I'll definitely keep you guys informed of that. Because that's definitely.
Can I make a suggestion, which is probably way too far ahead of the game, but whenever we get this interactive heat map up on the city computer, can we have like a little sidebar that says what you can do and tell people, let people understand that they are responsible for watering the trees that are street trees in front of their property. And
Yeah.
because a lot of these trees, if somebody had just stuck a hose out there for an hour sometime in July, they would be fine. But nobody thinks to water them when they're out on the street and they're big old trees. And maybe if we just reminded people that trees get thirsty too, it might help for future
You could do like a
situations like this.
campaign, you know?
Right, and that's, you know, that's
Yeah.
another thing that we can talk about is wrapping in this project with some public education efforts, some sort of campaign to talk about trees. So there's a lot that we can do with that, and we can start, you know, brainstorming that once we see everything. But I think because we will be hosting it, it'll sort of become ours, that we should be able to make edits as we see fit, that, to my knowledge.
Okay.
We may have to put some sort of acknowledgement on there that, you know, this was put together by the NASA Develop team and has since been edited for additional information by the city or something like that. I'm not sure, I would need to check. But I think that that's probably something that would be fine.
Okay.
What I will quickly show you, and these are not hold on one second. I don't have anything interactive to show you right now, but I can show you a couple images. So for instance, this is the infrared land surface temperature map that they developed. So we can see, you know, this heat really in the city center, and then also really on the southwest side. And obviously there's some patches here. We've got the base. But these are your general areas that you're seeing here. So
That's our airport, and then
airport,
some of the manufacturing.
right. So the only problem with just the infrared land surface temperature is it doesn't get too as you can see here, it doesn't get very detailed as you zoom in. But this GIS data can be used to pair with census data so that we can see how it plays out with socioeconomic factors.
It's
and
really
things like
interesting to
that.
see how it compares to other cities too.
Right, and there's not a whole lot of cities that have done heat mapping. There's some, and I don't know if there's any in the Midwest or like the Plains and Prairie that have done this. So it might look very different, but that is something that we could look into.
I'm just like, what does a Dallas look like compared to us, and what is a,
Right, actually, I think
so-
there was a city in Texas that did some, so we can kind of look and see what that looks like.
I think Kansas City.
Kansas City has?
I think
You think so?
Okay.
There was
So that would be a good one to compare to.
I'll take a look.
Yeah.
Okay.
That would be, I mean, just again, kind of see, are we doing better, worse? I mean, obviously, there's some key areas, like you said, in the downtown core and along the highways and
Right,
airports and things, but
right, yeah, there's there's a lot going on.
but in terms of the kind of layers of purple and pinkish color, it actually doesn't look, to my eye, I mean, I don't know exactly what I'm looking at, but it doesn't look that awful in general.
How old is this map?
They looked at data for the past 10 years, I believe, to find a general trend, I believe. I may be butchering that. I'll have to go back and look at the narrative, but they tried to get as recent as data as possible and then find sort of the change in temperature so we can see what that looks like over time.
So this isn't just like the work they've done over this summer. I
Um,
mean, it is the work they did this summer, but it's not from data they've collected this summer in a sense.
I think they're able to pull data from, I mean, I don't know how they store data, if it's all just sort of stored and then they just have to access it. But I believe they're able to use more than just, going to live data and then like capturing that image.
Okay.
They're able to pull historical data.
As well.
Mhm.
Okay.
So just to give you an idea of that, more to come.
Are the big squares, I mean, that piece, is that the
Are you talking about on-
refinery? No, I'm talking about this picture right here, when you follow the river up,
Up there.
and then where those big pieces are. What is that?
I'm not sure. Does anybody else know?
Is that,
The refinery would be
Colwich?
farther. Is it
that would
what?
be, it would be the refinery in Colwich you're talking about?
No, this is just,
It's in
this is the
Wichita.
city.
What would that be?
The landfill?
What is that? I mean, it's just
It might be
flat.
the landfill.
That's the landfill.
You think it
So
is?
that's the highway around it. So yeah, I think they're right.
Hmm.
That's the landfill.
Oh, of course, it's hot. That's the whole point of a landfill.
Just to create that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They also do cap some of that methane. The county is using some of it, thank goodness,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
they could probably do a lot more.
Well, then the other area that's, so East Wichita somewhere, I guess maybe that's Beechcraft. Potentially.
What was that?
That's on Kellogg though.
Oh, yeah, you're right. It's off. Well, but Beechcraft goes up against
Beach goes up
against
against Kellogg.
Kellogg.
It's
Okay,
hard to
right.
tell how far east that is. It's as east as the base, which was.
That would be Rock Road.
Is that
So-
not a runway just above the cursor?
I think that is,
So
I
that would
think
be
that
what,
is.
no, not Jabara, Jabara's farther north.
Further north, yeah.
Well, look, Beechcraft has runways too.
Yeah, there
I'm
you go,
gonna guess
that's what it
that's
is, where you have to drive underneath the runway through the tunnel.
Yeah.
On the one side, yeah. On
Hmm.
Central.
Okay,
Anyway.
we're distracted.
Yeah,
Yeah,
We're
no,
in
this is a
Colorado.
great map though.
we'll
Yeah.
get much more, I'll give this to you guys so you can, formulate your questions and stuff, and then we can come back and discuss.
I mean, it's where
Once we
cement
have it.
is, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Right,
When it comes down to
non-permeable
it,
surfaces,
so
concrete.
so looking at that, if we know that what we're seeing is most of it is cement and it's going to be cement, how do we do that with trees?
Yeah.
Looking at current landscaping and see, I mean, there could just be grass, so it could be changing that up. I don't know, that might require a little bit more thought. If we're looking at specific areas, we'd have to really dive into
Yeah,
certain areas.
because I mean, that's what we're saying, I mean, Canal Route, that whole area, I mean, that's you know, so yeah, I mean, if there was some additional landscaping, but I'm also wondering too, knowing that the hottest spots are again, the places that are gonna be the hardest to do that with. Do you then look at the next level up where maybe it's not necessarily covered by cement, but it still is, you know, maybe more of that pinky area as a place that could be a better place to
Right.
put in more trees too?
But
Like that's something to discuss.
Sorry, my brain's working on it.
I mean, Kent can also give us a really good talk on grass.
Yeah,
Not the kind of stuff that you have to water 10 times a day.
natural grasses and.
Natural grasses, some that are quite tall,
Mhm.
can be decorative or not, and can really be heat absorbers.
Right.
So that might be an option for some of these places where trees just aren't appropriate.
Right, and I think the idea is for trees is not just to help with like this ambient heat, but also to provide shade for those who are
Yeah.
outside.
Right,
Mhm.
right.
But
But I'm just
obviously
saying,
that's not
some
gonna work
places,
everywhere.
it's not right.
Yeah.
Right.
Where you don't
That's
have
what-
enough space, or
Mhm.
like in every parking lot has areas where they have lights
Mhm.
and they're covered in concrete.
Yeah, those.
And they
be
could
really-
have something planted there that's at least helping a little,
Mhm.
you know, so there's a lot that could be done. And a lot of it may just be education for when they build those things. Is how to, because, you know, the one, as we've talked about, I think here before, the most important parking places are always the ones where you get shade.
Yes.
I mean,
That
there's a
is
crowd
very
right there.
true.
But
It is.
retrofitting that.
Or
kind
what
of
if you
stuff
could
involves retrofitting an irrigation system, which doesn't mean it can't be done, but economically it's hard. And the same with places where it's all concrete. Well, you could put green roof on top of the buildings, except to do that, the building has to be built to carry the
Right.
weight and have
Of
the
that
irrigation.
in the first place.
So it's,
But solar,
retrofitting this stuff is hard.
what about solar panels you could put in parking lots and things of that nature that then you could also park under?
That's very true.
Yeah, and it
Right,
would
and it
provide
could
shade.
power them.
I
You
think
could
that
power
would
the
be
buildings.
a great idea.
Yeah,
Right, power buildings with the solar panels under and have the shade to, I
Uh-huh.
would, yeah.
that is done a lot of
It
places
is
across
done.
the world.
It is.
Yeah,
But,
I don't know that we have much
the
here,
fellow
but
that-
that'd
the
be great.
science
Yeah,
teacher
right,
at
we
East
should.
High School posted that they just passed the $100,000 mark
Yeah, they
in
did.
savings.
Yeah,
Why is that not a temptation to
it should be.
cover up those parking lots? I
The-
mean,
Yeah.
Isn't that an antidote?
Mhm.
It should be, I think, you know, in the case of the school situation and Stan, who's the teacher who did that, he really had to lobby and fundraise and
But
all those
now
things to get
he's
that.
demonstrating.
No, I agree. So it's how does he get that promoted even more? Like all of us know about it because this is what we do, but
We wish the city council would listen, and I sent that to the school district.
I want to say the
School
city
districts.
council isn't who we need to convince, it's the
the
school boards.
districts, yeah.
Yeah, they are separate, so.
They own all those parking, aren't there? There's a parking plan, isn't there, that's coming up, or do you know?
I'm not sure.
It's
I'll
slow.
have to take a look into
But
that.
anyway,
Yeah.
Sorry.
Anyway,
Hmm.
I think this is very informative of, okay, so where, and again, I would almost look at the next level up, not the yellow, because, you know, we know
Uh-huh.
it's cement.
Lighter colored
Um,
roof materials, that is an excellent suggestion.
Mhm.
Madam Chair, may I
Yes.
offer?
Please do, Elizabeth.
One is that I think this is absolutely marvelous what you all are doing, and I know you've had some work getting up and started. I'd like to suggest that the extension service be included. That's an excellent source of expertise and connection with the research being done at K-State and so forth. We have horticulture agents, and then there's the John Pear Center, which is doing extended research on trees. There is an arboretum around the extension center at 21st and Ridge. And the purpose is to demonstrate what trees in it, and it is also an experiment. So we're finding out what trees do better and which ones don't. This has been one of the worst year for trees in a long time. We've had whiplash weather, we had a warm fall, and then extended freezing immediately. A lot of trees have those winter freeze cracks on the north side of the tree. So we really need to in my opinion, cherish our older trees and attempt to save as many of them as we can. And it is going to be difficult to grow young trees. It's going to require so much more maintenance and nurturing than we put into it in the past. And that's hard when you've got crews of guys not making a lot of money and maybe not being trained on exactly what they need to be doing for city trees.
If this is the kind of weather we're going to be getting, one of my, possibly the favorite part of my work life is I go over once every 2 weeks and walk around the art museum and evaluate the condition of their gardens. But in the last year, they have lost about 15 mature trees. And these gardens are cherished. I mean, they are taken care of to the nth degree and
Yeah.
watered and everything. They've lost about 15 trees, and every plant that was younger than a year or a year and a half old is dead after this past summer. There's a certain point at which the weather is so bad that it really, you can't, unless you build a refrigerated unit around whatever it is you're trying to grow, it's not gonna make it.
Right.
You have to work at it. And there needs to be more education. We have in the budget for 1,000 new trees, which is wonderful, but we're losing somewhere like 1,600, 1,700 per year. So
We're not
still
actually-
falling behind. I'm not complaining about, it not being enough, but it's
Someone should.
I mean, the math is such that it's not enough. Yeah.
And we're
Right.
hoping that the tree policy will even that out a little bit and not make it such a loss. That's what they're trying to figure out right now.
That's
Yeah, but
what
the
she's
tree
saying,
policy
though.
only covers a small number of trees in the city. It's only the trees that
Right.
are on city byways and things like that. I mean, commercial and residential trees are not included. Is that not correct?
That's correct.
That's right,
Yeah.
private property.
Yeah.
Well, and to Elizabeth's point, if we know that 1,600 are dying a year, but we're only replacing 1,000 over time.
Right, it's still
That's-
significant. It adds
Yeah,
up.
it adds up. And even not that long of a time it adds up, but,
We're so far
Yeah.
behind already
right.
that, and will the trees survive when they're planted?
I mean,
Not without the care of the people who live in the house.
right.
Yeah, the city crews just, they can't, I mean, they're,
They used
Up
to,
buried.
they used to come around because they planted all these new dwarf trees in my neighborhood.
Mhm.
And the dwarf trees are now, maybe as tall as the roof. I mean, that's it. That's as big as they're gonna get. They're not gonna get any bigger. But they went with their big buckets and they poured water on each tree once a month.
Mhm.
So
haven't done that for some.
they haven't done that, but
Well,
this was
actually
years ago,
many
but that was not enough either.
Mhm.
But it was
Especially with
also
the way
not
the
as
heat is
hot
now,
then.
too.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
not as hot then.
Yep.
So, yeah, somebody's got something in the chat.
Yeah. Turf block parking surfaces, utilizing natural fibers such as concrete.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, so these are all,
Yeah.
we've talked about a little bit in the green space committee too about using semi-permeable surfaces in parking lots or even piloting something just so that we can get an idea of the change and or what that impact might be.
We do have that at the water center. There is a small parking lot that is permeable pavement. It has to be vacuumed once a year.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, you have to get all the crud out
I
of
think
it.
the water center
Yeah.
is still closed too.
Yeah,
So no
but-
one's
and
been
it's
using it.
behind, so nobody, but I got a tour of it. And she's like, yeah, but you have to do this and this and this. So
Yeah,
permeable pavement has got more involved than just,
right. It's definitely not easy to figure out. A lot of moving parts too. One last thing I wanted to show you guys was this is not the very detailed canopy map because I don't have that yet. But this is just an idea to give you of percentage of canopy cover by census block group. So it shows you kind of where these differences lie. And so again, where we saw that area of high heat, very little canopy. City center as well. So, this is basically just data to provide that correlation, which we already know exists.
Right.
So just to give you guys an idea, this is, from that updated data. Where those like those canopy differences lie.
Okay. We need
Um,
to figure out a really creative downtown strategy. Because that's also where the public, or, you know, more of the public trees might go to, right? I mean, or could,
possible.
yeah.
And with the tree policy and with this sort of supplementing it and us figuring out where to prioritize trees, it might not be so cut and dry. So that may be where you guys come in or staff come in or both parties come in to try and develop what that prioritization looks like. And we don't have that answer just yet. So that may be something that comes down the pipeline in coming months. I know they're trying, I think they're hoping for this to go to council late fall, but I'm not sure. I don't know the details of where it's at as far as what the different policies are regarding construction and all of that. So we shall see. And again, I should have the full report by next meeting, if it's not, barring any delays. Yep.
Yeah.
And that will be online, and so we'll be able to share it out. We may do a press release, but again, we can think about some strategies for education for that as well.
That's good.
But that's all I have for that for now.
Okay, planning procedure
Oh,
draft.
that's also me. So you guys may have seen budget passed council on Tuesday,
And so how much is in it for us?
$100,000.
That's what the mayor told me.
2023.
Yay.
So,
The start.
it's something.
Yep.
And so.
It's something to most of us, that's a lot of money.
I know.
But I mean, it won't
from
go
a
very
city
far for
level,
what we
it's-
need to
yeah,
do, but
but-
still,
Right,
it's-
so
we do have some money. so
Somewhere in
that's good.
between a lot and a little.
Yeah.
With that, we want to make sure that we're spending the money that will be the highest impact, and that because it's such a small amount comparatively. So one of the things I was asked to do is to put together sort of a business case evaluation template. So, if we're wanting to fund a project or a grant or something, this is something that would be essentially filled out to make the case of why this is important. And this is something, sorry guys, I'll share my screen. I realize I'm not doing that. This is something that would go to the city manager for final approval, or potentially city council. I think we had talked about we would bring things to city council for a recommendation, so it could go either way depending on how they want to do this. But essentially, it's just an outline of the spending, if it's a project, what that project entails, what is it accomplishing, what are the logistics behind it? So who's doing what work? What is the timeline for this? We want to be detailed so that we can make a case of, yes, we've thought this through 100%, we know what we're doing. What are the goals? How does it align with the city's vision, mission, and values? And then how does it align with climate adaptation and mitigation plans? Now, I know we don't have that solidified right now, but I wanted to include this in here because once that's established, we probably want to make sure that this is going to get us to our goals in that plan. So that gives us some room there. And then this just tells us, is this internal for the city? Is it public facing? Is it a little bit of both? Implementation and operating times, what are the costs? And then to implement, and then also ongoing. So if it's funding a program that is over the course of a year, what does that look like? And are we supplementing it with a grant? Or if we are, and then the grant ends, how do we plan on continuing this program? Right. So just those things to make us think about how is whatever we're putting together sustainable in the sense that it can be long lasting. And then also wraps in a little bit of the matrix that EFC developed. So how does it affect economy? How does it affect society? And then how does it affect the environment? So those three areas that we've identified as sort of the pillars of sustainability. And then the matrix score. And I just put this on here sort of as a comparative thing. I know the matrix score in itself doesn't mean a lot unless it's compared to some of the other projects. But I think it's still something that's good to keep track of, as well as this benefit cost ratio that we're seeing. We want to see something above 1, I believe, is how that worked out. And then, just a general description of why it's needed. And that may be a little redundant from just the project description, but essentially laying out the case for that spending. And I can certainly help fill this out once we get to that point. So yeah, don't worry about that. But I wanted to give you guys an idea of, how we're thinking about this. Questions?
I would assume this is kind of a don't use it, you lose it type of scenario, right? Like if we don't use 100,000 this next year, we probably wouldn't get at least another 100,000 the following year. Is that an accurate?
I would say that's probably pretty accurate. I don't know for certain. But I would think that we are probably expected to use that full amount.
Yeah. And that starts, so the fiscal year for the city is
January 1st.
okay, so we've got so we could, between now and the beginning of the year, maybe.
And, right, and that's what you guys are doing in your committees, right? We're thinking about projects, thinking about how we want to spend this, but I would also think about things that might come up down the road. So maybe we identify all these projects, but then there's a grant that comes down the road that can do some really cool stuff, but it requires,
A match.
exactly,
Right.
X, Y, and
We
Z
need to have
percent
that.
match.
That's what I'm thinking. We almost need to, at least to some degree. So yes, like, Lori's committee is working on projects and whatnot, and we are, and so on and so forth, but there's gotta be, and maybe, we utilize the time that we have in here, people bringing those projects and thus figuring out, okay, how between now and the end of the year, do we think we're gonna use 60% of it, or whatever we just, deem is wise, leaving a certain bucket of money for exactly that purpose of if we need to match.
That's kind of the hard part is because everyone's kind of working on things separately.
Right, there's gotta be a place or another subcommittee that works just on this funding, something, but I mean, there's gotta be a way to, I think we should utilize the next 4 months between now and the end of the year to create some sort of fund plan of how we think we wanna use the money. So that, we're not just flailing around next year, right? I mean, we've got 4 months before the fiscal year starts, so let's kind of maybe make a plan.
Okay.
Strategically, I think the use it or lose it is a good point to remember. Also, since it's our first year being funded, I'm almost inclined to say I'd like to hear what everybody else has to say about it, but to think that we would be better off focusing on projects that were one shot and done as opposed to ongoing. Or maybe it's the other way around. I mean, is city
Further
council
discussion.
next year, when they're deciding on whether to fund this committee or not, going to say, well, look what they accomplished for what we did last year?
Right.
Or if we're doing some ongoing project, are they going to say, well, we need to keep funding them because look, they're in the middle of something.
Right.
Maybe a little bit of both, no. What I would look at too, to what she has up there is, can we show that some of the projects that we're doing with $100,000 is actually going to save the city money? And therefore they could give that to us the following year on top of what, anyway, but I mean, but I think there's a little bit of strategy involved in that too, that we need to pick projects that will show a return on investment, so to speak.
To me, this reads like a grant proposal.
Yeah.
And you have to write the grant to
Right.
fit the grant proposal
Right.
criteria, and that's,
Exactly.
we just need to choose the project to fit that.
And we've only had one meeting in the economic development one so far, so we haven't even, we were just kind of framing what we want to accomplish, but we've been talking more of it from a policy standpoint than a project standpoint, and I don't know if that was same for you, Lori, in a sense. Well, you had the one grant that you were looking at.
Yeah.
So if that's something that,
And that would have taken a match.
right, and how much was that match?
Was it
25%.
25?
So it might have been 25,000 of the 100,000 kind of deal if it was $100,000 grant.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, I would say maybe we say, kind of this next meeting round, when everyone's meeting with their committees, talk about that, like what kind of projects and maybe look utilizing this more.
So maybe
Nina,
next,
there's another minute, sorry.
yeah, sorry, I just didn't want to interrupt.
Yeah. That's all right, I'll
maybe,
interrupt for you. I'm good at it.
Before I lose my thought, maybe next month we should focus on like doing a workshop of funding ideas, and that be our main focus.
I think probably for the next 4 months.
Okay.
I mean, it's gonna take a while. I mean, I think really between now and the end of the year, this is the best use of our time is to figure out how to, in this room, right? Not necessarily in our committees, but in this room.
Right, and keep in mind too that we may have to move like our November, December dates, because those are gonna fall in the,
Yeah,
Holidays,
yeah.
yeah.
so
Yeah.
we'll once it gets a little bit closer, I'll talk to you
We'll
guys
figure
about
that out.
rearranging those, because I don't think we wanna just cut them, because that,
No, we're gonna need it.
if we need to do these funding workshops, then
Right.
we're gonna need that.
We're gonna
time.
need it. You and I, we should talk soon and figure out kind of, okay, each workshop, what does that look like between now and the end of the year? So we've got a
Yeah.
game plan.
We can talk about that.
I would suggest that to talk about the workshops, we do a board report first, the meeting, the
Yeah.
committee meetings first.
Yep.
So that you can find out what each committee's doing.
Yes.
What they might need funding for.
Correct. Yeah, agreed. I would say, to those who are online too, particularly at this next meeting that you have with your committees, let them know, and really start discussing that. What projects do you foresee within your own committees that we might need funding for? That might even include a little bit of marketing. But anyway, I think that's gonna be, I would say that's our priority for the rest of this.
Okay.
Personally, I think that's our priority for the rest of the year.
And then I think what we'll want to do is, once you guys have a general idea, I think I would probably want to either just run that by Bob,
Mhm.
or just to get a sense of like, yes, this is,
Yeah,
we're on the right track, and
Yeah.
there's no red flags that are gonna surprise us down the road.
Right.
Of being like, oh, well, we didn't know that wasn't what they wanted to do, or, I
And
mean, I want you guys to take control of this, but also we do have,
You have to answer to somebody.
Somebody.
exactly.
And if they're, so $100,000 starts in January, but the city is deciding on its budget over the summer, we should show that we've used some, but also show where the rest of the money is going to by the time they're looking at the budget, I would assume.
Yes.
So really, we have kind of 6 months, the first part of the year, to show what we have done and what we plan to do.
Yeah, it's a good idea to have some stuff under our belt by,
June,
early June,
yeah,
and then have a plan for the rest of the year.
that we can show, this is how it's budgeted out.
Right, 'cause we don't want them to come in and say, well, they haven't used it.
That's what I'm
let's just cut
thinking,
it.
yeah.
Right.
On the flip side, we don't want to use all 100,000 the first 6 months of the year
No,
either, because
no.
that's
Yeah.
not good management either, so.
Right.
So finding that balance.
Right, and so I'm not sure who will be looking at that again, if it's just gonna be assessed by the budget office, or if it will be looked at by Bob again, or our department, Public Works, who knows?
Okay.
This is
How
very
is
new,
it
so-
written into the budget? Are there stipulations, or just there's 100,000 that we get to make suggestions on how to spend, or how does that work?
So it's non-departmental, so that's why it goes directly to the city manager or city council. So it's not technically approved through Public Works, even though that's where this board is housed. And I'm not super familiar with non-departmental funds, but I know it came out of another pool that wasn't being used. So it's earmarked specifically for sustainability purposes. Now, I don't believe that anybody else can sort of tap into those funds besides this board related to this work. So it's really just up to this group.
Okay.
Yeah.
Should we make our first project to get a good website set up?
And
I
does it
mean-
have like the water rebate and the electric on equipment, is that separate, or does that come out? of
That
ours?
is separate.
That's
That comes
separate.
out of the air quality grant that is yearly, that we're re-upping soon.
Good.
Yeah.
And then while I'm on that, Tammy asked how much interest there's been.
Yeah.
So far, so good. We had a big push at the beginning. We have allocated about $3,000 in rebates, and a lot of people have been really excited about it. There's also been a lot of interest from people who have not recycled. So there would be, potentially more rebates if that wasn't a stipulation, but that's not
No.
something we're ready for.
Do you think
Yeah,
Some
it'll be up
places-
again next year?
I'm not sure.
It's about the time I need to buy a new mower, so.
and we
It's
have
hard
the
to
water
say.
rebate funding that has
Mhm.
carried over and carried over and carried over.
Right.
It was quite a pot of money, but people are just not applying for it.
Okay.
So
So-
usually, I mean, they bump it, they promote it towards the end of the year, and I believe they do end up, maxing out those funds.
Mhm.
They
We
haven't.
have one portion of that amount of money. I think that was, theirs is 100,000, ours is 10. And so, I'm not sure if, say we hit half that, if that's gonna be considered enough to continue it into the next year. I do know though that KDHE is excited about this because not a lot of other communities are even making efforts to try and reduce emissions. And so we are doing that and they like to see that. So
If you can show how many, yeah.
yeah, so we might decide to continue that again. We'll really have to see towards the end of the year.
So.
Is there a deadline on this?
The rebate runs through the end of this year. That's what it's. that was the timeframe.
$50 per.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, and if there is a way to put more money to that, to give larger rebates, depending on income. Because electric mowers, plug-in mowers, battery powered mowers aren't, well, any mower is expensive. And like we
Right.
talked about before, people run theirs until they won't run anymore. And then they look for the cheapest used one they can find. And it's not like there's not places out there.
Right.
That's where it's, that's why they have to have these recycled. Because otherwise it's just gonna be that cheap old mower that someone else is gonna be using and we won't have made any progress.
Right.
So they have to be recycled. I would keep that on the list at all
Right, and I think
times.
that's what we want. There's another city that does $50 if you just purchase one and 100 if you purchase and recycle.
That's a good idea.
That would be
That would be
helpful.
helpful.
That's not even
um,
half the cost of them.
Yeah,
So,
and so one of the BIL projects that we are looking at is an extension of this program. It would be a larger pot of money and we'd have a lot more flexibility to do stuff like that. So
yeah.
I think that's in the energy efficiency block grant. Energy efficiency and conservation block grant that opens fourth quarter this year. So I'll have to take a look at that. There's a few different projects in there. We may need to narrow it down. But if this is sort of deemed a success, then we might move forward with that one and one other in that category. So.
Can I ask, because I use an electric mower with a cord. And I did that because I didn't want to be buying batteries, which do die and need to be replaced every, maybe longer than a couple of years, but that's what it used to be. But my point is that the cord costs almost as much as the mower. If you have a reasonably large yard, you need a really heavy duty cord. And is the cord included in these rebates in any way?
Not in the current one. It's only like a full mower. We're not even doing battery rebates at this point, but that was something that we had considered for if we expand it through BIL funds, is offer to expand it to batteries, maybe cords. That's the first I've heard of them being so expensive.
I mean, I have a small urban lot, but I still need a 100-foot cord, and a
Yeah.
100-foot heavy duty cord costs
Right.
$100.
Yeah, and I think another way we'd want to expand is offering the rebate to businesses as well, because right now it's just residential. So there's a lot more we can do with it, but with limited funds, we kept it very, very small.
It's a pilot program, like you said,
Exactly.
but
Yeah.
a good start, but not where you want to end up.
And just so you
Yeah.
know, the batteries do last a really long time. It's not like.
I
they
know
used to
they've
be.
gotten much better now.
But when you need to have the battery replaced, you take the battery to some of the battery shops, the one that's on Central and Edgemore's where I go. And they know how to open it up and take them out and put in new. And they did that for me after my mower got to be about 5 or 6 years old.
Wow.
So yeah, because it just was, and
Because I gotta say, dancing with a cord gets really old after a while, but
Oh, no.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it does.
no. Well,
Has there been any consideration of folks who just take out their lawn and plant grasses or orchards or?
Not
So
in the
turn
way
in a
of
mower without
rebates.
getting a new one.
Because lawns,
Mhm.
lawns are just water intensive anyway.
Right.
Mhm.
We're
think-
getting a monster we could just bypass or incentivize some other way.
I think one of the things we touched on in a previous meeting was, low mow or no mow landscaping and, educating on sort of switching to those types of turfs. So that could be something that we
Could
touch on.
incentivize,
Um,
something besides.
right, I'm trying to think how we could incentivize that.
But education, starting with that first, because
Mhm.
people may not realize they have more options than they think they do, unless they live in a homeowners association.
Yeah.
But people who
Well-
live in regular houses have more options.
Right.
But many, many people in Wichita have no idea what Jane's talking about.
You know, I'm back on your homeowners association comment. Well, we're dealing with, homeowners associations are at the stage now where they are desperate for people. Nobody wants to volunteer. They're trying to find other solutions for implementing their homeowners association rules, because after you've been stuck with them for 10 or 15 years, everybody in the HOA hates them.
Yeah.
So the possibility of going in and actually talking directly to some of these HOA boards and saying, listen, here's the step-by-step process for you to amend your regulations.
Mhm.
Here's what you could do.
Mhm.
Here is how much time and effort and money it would save everybody in this neighborhood over
Mhm.
X years.
Mhm.
And maybe instead of trying to convince one homeowner at a time to go low mow, we go and do, a whole subdivision at a time. It's a thought.
Well, definitely, but if we were, now looking back at this budget again, if we were to do something like that, we would have to pay someone to go do, I don't know how many homeowners associations there are in Wichita. Lots, lots.
It'd be a
Um,
logistical challenge.
So, yeah, that would be,
You'd have to almost zone it, start in a zone and work your way
yeah,
around
you'd have
each
to have
year.
different
But
people
that
to go
could be
do
the
it. but-
public outreach message, one of the options
One of the things that we
also.
do, yeah. that's true.
Right, yeah, that would definitely be part of it.
Mhm.
And just, even if there's a way, and I don't even know if there is, to find the presidents of the HOAs
Mhm.
and send them information, say, would you
Yeah.
like us to come and speak to you?
Right.
The city's got that.
Guys, we have about 17 minutes left.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm gonna move us along, because I was looking at going over. I'm almost tempted, because of the limited time, to skip our committee updates this time. And then really do them in a strong way next time, once we've had a chance to talk with our committees about the fact now that we've got funding and whatnot. Laura, you're giving me a look like I have something to
Well,
report.
that's okay, that's
Okay.
okay, that's okay. We will
for
have
this
more to
one,
report
please
next
call
time.
it.
Yeah, you'll have a
We
report
will
on
have,
next time.
we will
That'll
have
be
more
more
to
time next
report
time.
next time.
And then go down to this last bullet point of climate planning and community engagement forum use and Facebook, which I think is also still you.
Yes, it is. Right, so we talked before about getting started on the climate planning, adaptation and mitigation plans. And so, there's a bunch of different steps to that, including identifying the hazards and risks that the city faces, and identifying options. So we've looked at a bunch of different risks, and a lot of that was done through the CDP reporting that I submitted. All the options, well, not all the options, but several options have been presented in the EFC report. And so sort of the next stage, maybe the next stage, is community involvement of what does the community want to see and what do they prioritize as needs. And so one of the things that we need to figure out is at what point do we want to bring in that community feedback and how. And so a couple of things we've talked about in the past are using Forum, which is that online interactive space. And then I also wanted to mention the Facebook group that our communications team put together. It was the old air quality page and got a little revamped. So there's people on there that were already pre-existing. I know some of you guys have joined, but if you haven't and you want to follow along, I believe it's Wichita Air Quality and Sustainability. And so I think anyone can post on that.
It's just a
Second.
group, right?
Yeah, so anybody can post on that, but that's a tool for communication that we can use.
Okay.
I have the listserv that I mostly just push meeting notices through, but that's another option that we can do.
Okay.
And so I guess I want to get ideas from you guys on, you know, are we ready to go to forum and ask people what their thoughts are? And if we are, how do we want to frame these questions? Do we need to sit down and develop a set of questions? Are there other things that we need to do, like, you know, little mini town halls and things like that? But I want to let you guys, you know, sort of drive this process as to how, you know, you guys feel is most appropriate to approach this. I know a lot of you guys are more steeped in the community than I am, so.
Well, I mean, Lawrence, they've already been down this road. Maybe they already have these kinds of questionnaires worked out.
That's be a good start, is to find what somebody else has
Yeah,
done.
what other-
I will say, garbage in, garbage out. If we don't ask the right questions, we're not gonna get any data
Right.
worth having.
Right.
So we need to really think about the
Mhm.
questions before we
Well,
post
and
them.
if we're
Right.
talking to the choir, right, as well, I mean, I feel like depending on how we reach people, are we gonna be only talking to the people who, you know, are kind of already very invested into
Already
this?
environmental geeks, just go
Right.
ahead and say it.
Environmental geeks, like ourselves, you know, or are they, or are we actually reaching the broader community that may not think about this on a daily basis, but is, you know, at least somewhat engaged or interested? Or not?
That's one of the things that forum might be. I mean, I know that nobody does forum, from what I've been told. Nobody ever answers the questions on forum. But
Well, we don't promote it much when
You
it's not a big
don't.
project.
you don't,
So,
right?
Yeah.
And I think I may have done it one time, but I haven't seen anything. I never saw it
Right.
before, I never saw it since. But forum is an option to ask questions, to get some answers, but we would have to help, if it's Bob that writes the questions, help him write these questions.
It would probably be me writing the questions and
Okay.
sending it to the person who has access to the
Okay.
page.
We have talked about doing that for the trash issue,
Mm-hmm.
but nothing's ever come of that yet. But maybe we'll be able to
That
do
will
that at our
probably
meeting next
be,
week.
that will probably be something that comes down the line after the trash haulers meeting.
I'm not saying we should do this, but I'm gonna throw out an idea.
Okay.
You know, okay, we've got some funding. What if we actually did a real study or a real, you know, community outreach, you know, and instead of using a, you know, forum or something that we know is gonna be kind of a little bit not useful.
It's like a consulting company to do.
Potentially, again, I'm not saying we should do this, I'm just throwing it out as, you know, if we really want to find out real data, why don't we go out and actually get some real data?
So
If it's not
someone
taking
going
effect.
door to door or someone or holding town halls?
Combination probably. I don't know, but that's kind of what an advocacy firm or a consulting firm would help us design and figure out.
There are some really good ones out there, but I have no idea what they charge. I suspect
That's the
it's in
thing.
Yeah, I don't-
buckets.
Yeah, we may end up using our whole budget.
Yeah,
We don't want to do that either. So, but I mean,
Yeah.
I think the question, that's the question to find out, right? What would it cost? And if it is $100,000, then okay, maybe we don't go that route. But if
Isn't
it's,
that what it cost for didn't the city just do the food study and it was like 100,000?
Oh, gosh, I don't know how much that was.
For that consulting group to do the food desert.
Right, yeah, I don't know how much that cost, but I'm
Was
sure
that
it wasn't
EFC?
cheap. No, I think that was the, oh gosh, I can't remember the name, but with the food master plan and all that. Yeah, I can't think of the name of the organization, but it was a different group.
It was some kind of consulting.
I mean, if it's gonna be $100,000, then I don't advocate for that, but if it's something that is more reasonable that we could, you know, get some real consulting help with. Is it possible to use it? Yes, I mean, Tammy's idea, we could maybe look at utilizing resources at WSU that way.
Class.
That
Yeah.
actually is much more economical
That
idea.
would be a much more economical idea, certainly not $100,000.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, something that we could really get real data. Cause I'm not sure
Right.
that just utilizing Facebook and forums is gonna collect the data
So-
we're looking for.
I wonder too, with this idea of a class, you know, I'm thinking of how organizations propose like capstone projects to
Mhm.
groups. And so I wonder if They usually have to fund it to some degree, but I don't know how much. I don't think it's gonna be, $100,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
maybe that is something we look into is look into like say the public administration school, the Hugo Wall School, and look at their
Yeah.
capstone
Mhm.
projects and see if there's some way.
We could ask them to do one for
Yeah,
us.
I'd have to look at the timeline.
We could
for
also
that.
do public forums at WSU then too. We could do some town halls there, go over to Friends as well or wherever. I mean, like, I do think some town halls are good. Again, you're gonna capture the people through that are interested. So I think it's a combination of town halls where you're getting people who are interested and then some level of public outreach to people who you just call and say, hey, what do you think about these things? And they're like, I don't know, but here's my, but the I don't knows turn into actual answers as they start to talk,
Mhm.
So
it sounds like then what I could do in my spare time.
could be a spare time.
Is put together sort of a list of questions to run by you guys. We can make sure that we're being, we're not asking like leading questions or anything like that. So we can sort of get at the heart of their thoughts and opinions. And then workshop that around a little bit and then plan for a time to get it set up on forum as a start. And this would also work for focus groups or town halls. And then figure out a game plan for how we want to engage. Because I think that is something we probably want to get started this year if this is something we want to have under our belts by next summer.
Yeah.
So,
Can I give you a potential out for at least a month and say that I think you get better engagement from the public if you have a specific project in mind. If you just sort of ask general environmental questions, everybody's going to say, oh, that's a great idea, and then walk away and not give you anything useful. Whereas if we go and say, here's 3 projects we're considering for environmental improvements in Wichita, which one do you think is the most important? Then we'll get some
Right.
actual public response on
rank them
real
and-
life.
right.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there will also be people who throw their own ideas out there as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah,
What else
Say,
would you like to
I don't
see?
like any of these.
Yeah.
I want
Yeah,
this.
Well, we should put out a place. Okay, here's the ones that the board is considering, rank them. What else would you like to see us do?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
get other ideas that we can bring to the table.
yeah, if you give somebody something concrete to respond to, you'll get way better
I agree.
response.
Yeah,
There's a page in the EFC report for community engagement. It's page 48, just for you.
But if we're doing the full-on committee reports and projects next meeting,
Yeah.
then I would wait until
I think-
after
yeah,
that
I
to
think that
start.
makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because otherwise we might get some really, really vague answers as well of, let's just
There you go.
put up solar panels. Okay, how many, where?
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I would, next meeting, let's all maybe come prepared from our committees to give our top 1 or 2 projects that we'd like to work on over the next 12 months that could also potentially be funded. And if there is some ideas around what the funding might be needed for it, if not, we can figure that over the next few months, but any information like that would be helpful. We'll start collecting it and start creating a game plan.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
So then I will, I know the NASA stuff is due, so I'll send that out ahead of time so everyone has a chance to look at it, and then we can spend some time on questions. We'll probably cap that time so that we can spend the rest of it
On this.
in this workshop.
Yeah. What we might add to our agendas is kind of, okay, we're gonna spend X amount of time on this so that we don't get too
Okay.
far,
Yeah, to
especially
help.
given what we've really gotta.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just as guilty about pushing this as anybody else,
Yeah,
but
put some times on it.
sometimes
Yeah,
on there
we
kind of help.
Okay, I can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alright.
Okay, any last thoughts, questions, concerns anyone wants to address before we adjourn today?
Did we talk about Kent's consider battery rebuild infrastructure? I guess we sort of did. Lori brought it
A little bit.
to our attention. Other than that,
Okay, then I'm going, I don't have to call a motion, right? Just
No.
adjourn.
Yeah, there you go.
thank you.